iPhone 16 Plus 1 year later, should you still buy it? So my iPhone 16 Plus I picked up when it launched. So it's been a little bit over a year now with the device. And I do want to talk about if it's still a worthy option because they actually did reduce the price of the 16 Plus and almost nobody really talks about this phone. And it's because it's just not the Pro Max. It's not the base model, which is the cheaper model. It's kind of that in-betweener, kind of like the Air is this year where it's not the base or the Pro Max, so people aren't loving it too much, but there's other reasons why people, but we're gonna not love that one. But we'll get into that topic in another video. But this one, quick spec refresh. This does have a 6.7-inch Super Retina XDR OLED display, although it isn't the Pro Motion, so that's something to keep in mind. You don't get that on board, but it's nearly the same exact display without the 120 hertz. Now, for a lot of people, that was the deal breaker with this device, but at the end of the day, you know, it's still a strong display. 48 megapixel dual camera. One of them is a 12 megapixel. It does record up to 4K at 60. It does have the Apple A18, and why that's actually still a good CPU is there's actually rumors that there's going to be an A18 version of a MacBook. So that's definitely still a strong CPU on board, and this does have a 4674 milliamp hour battery. If you're wondering why I'm still running iOS 18 on board, it's because I didn't want to update every single large iPhone to iOS 26, and I'm just going to keep this one at 18 for a while because there's some things about 18 I still like to me it's still a clean looking software, but we'll get into iOS 26 content in other videos, but the tinting is definitely a little bit different on iOS 18. It's not quite as liquid glass looking, and for those of you already used to 26, this might look a little bit dated, but I'm going to leave this one on the 18 versions for a little while longer. Maybe I'll go to 26. But I found that 26 did hurt the battery a little bit on my other 16 models, and this one actually had a really strong battery, so I didn't want to mess that up. Okay, so should you buy this when it comes to the build and the body? And the answer is, well, absolutely. The build and the body is actually identical to the iPhone 17, and it's actually a little bit cheaper at the base 128 gig storage now than the iPhone 17. Let me know which greenish color you like more, the teal or the green of this year. I personally like the newer green that just came out, and not just because it's newer. I just like it more than teal, but teal definitely stands out. And for some people, this bluish green will be definitely more up their alley. But if we go to the Apple Store right here, you'll see that the phone, well, it's $799 to start. So I was a little bit incorrect in that statement. It's basically the same price. So you can get this with a larger screen at the same price as this, but this does have the better front-facing camera and the 120 hertz. But doing a comparison between those, let me know if you want to see a separate video on that. I just wanted to state that, yes, from a build and body perspective, this phone feels exactly like a 17. Now you can see right here, we do have the USB-C. On the left, we do have the action button, which is nice for this device. I don't believe the 15 Plus had the action button. You have the volume rockers here, and on the right side, power button and the same camera control you find on the newer phones. It also has the clean rear with the Apple logo centered, and it's all glass. It's just a clean look overall. So for me, I definitely really enjoy this one. I also like that it's only 199 grams. So this phone, even though it's a bigger device, it is at 6.7 inches and it weighs less than a Max. So this is a nice weight and size of a phone. It just feels comfortable to use for a bigger phone by comparison to like a 17 Pro Max, for example. So 1 year later, when it comes to the display, should you buy it here? And the answer is, well, it depends on how much you value 120 hertz. If you value 120 hertz, I would recommend going to the 17 at the same price. Yes, it is a little bit smaller, but you're going to pay the same money and get the smoother panel. If you do want the bigger panel, but you don't want to go all out for it, this is probably going to be your best option right here. Because while the Air does have a 6.5, that's a little bit smaller, and it is a 120 hertz panel on the Air right here. This device does make some sacrifices that the 16 Plus doesn't make. For example, dual camera, larger battery, and while there's a larger display, yes, it's not 120 hertz. The Air is going to cost you $300 more with taxes, somewhere around there. So definitely the 16 Plus for a big display is a really decent value here, and you could probably even find it cheaper than at the official retail prices in many locations. So this is a solid deal for a large iPhone right now in the area of display. It does get 1,000 nits, 2,000 outdoors, and while the newer phones are a bit brighter at the full 3,000 nits, this is still bright enough. I never really had an issue, and while this is a not 120 hertz, it does have the same resolution. So the actual screen quality, even now when you're reading stuff, it all looks the same. It really does. The sharpness is exactly the same. So we're already seeing articles on an Air 2, but the actual text and stuff looks exactly the same. So you're not going to see any substantial difference. Now the bezels on here are a little bit thicker than some of the Pro models. You can see them right here, but they're not too much different from like well, they are a little bit different from the 17, but they're not too much different from like a 15 Pro Max, for example. They're pretty similar there, but they're not the most bezel-less display right here. But it is 6.7 inches for those of you who do like that size and format. I think it's pretty durable when it comes to scratch resistance as well. At the end of the day, this is basically like a 15 Pro Max Lite, honestly, but you can still get this in stores right now. So I think, if you get this, you're not going to be too disappointed in that area unless you really, really need the 120 hertz. So when it comes to software, this is clearly capable of the 26. Again, I'm staying on 18 for now, but the software is strong. It's simple, it's clean. It does have all the polish and the ecosystem stuff that you want across the board with the Apple devices. But at the end of the day, you're just running it on a slightly less smooth display. That's about it. But still has iMessage, still has FaceTime, still has all the applications you want to run, and has 8 gigs of RAM, so it's not slow in any real significant way. It can run every single game on the App Store pretty much. So yes, the 16 Plus, when it comes to its software, is a good experience. The only real difference is going to be in the area of camera. There's a few differences when it comes to zooming and a couple of pro level features that you'll find. But the actual camera results are still extremely strong. So there's not really much in the way. Now, the front-facing camera, you're not going to see that extra software feature that's included in there to match up to the ultra wide, but this can still back out a little bit, so it's still pretty good. It's a 12 megapixel camera, not the 18 of the new phones, but still, this is not a weak camera in no way, shape, and form. The software here just kind of reminds me of iPhone 17 Pro Max. It's essentially identical. So you probably have like 1 year less of updates with this software here, but I feel no difference using this than using this or using the iPhone 17. So yes, you should consider still getting this for software. If this is on your radar, it's definitely a go in that department. So when it comes to performance, this is one of the only areas where you're going to really see a big change when you go to any of the newer models. It's just the way things kind of fly through, especially when multitasking. It doesn't have quite the same smoothness as an iPhone 17 model. Does it matter really? I don't think so for a lot of people buying this. This is like, to me, one of the appliance iPhones of iPhones. It just gets the job done. It's maybe not, if you think about like car trims, they'll have like LE, SE, sport trims, limited trims, things of that sort. This is like the LE, like it gets the job done. It's still mostly the same thing, but it doesn't have the limited trim features. It doesn't have even the SE Sport features. It just has quite a good amount. So I would say that would be this trim level right here on this. If you get what the analogy what I'm trying to say, it's fine. Performance is good. Like there's nothing to complain about. It's still clocked at 4.04 gigahertz. To me, this is the iPhone Air of the iPhones, actually, if you really think about it, because if you look at the iPad Airs, those have like aluminum shell like this. They do have good features. I feel like the iPhone Air, the one that actually came out, I know they call it Air because it's thin, but it actually looks to me more like an iPad Pro M4, like the super thin factor, the sleek space black here. They called it the Air because it's slim, but this kind of feels more like what a iPad Air feels like, but for iPhones, if you get what I'm saying. It's definitely a strong performer though, for most folks. So should you still buy it in terms of the camera? Now, I think yes, 100%. I like the 2X. It's pretty good. And the zoom, I think, is enough for most people. Those extra zoom cameras that we've been getting on some of these newer phones, I don't really ever zoom past like 5 times, like for the most part. Yeah, I do zoom in a couple of times really far, but for, just daily use, I think these are still fine. Ultra wide is nice to have. Even the Air doesn't have the ultra wide. And if we go over to video, we do have 4K 60. The video doesn't really feel any different in reality to most of the pros until you start playing around with the Pro Raw Res. But when I get to that point, I'm already just going to my main camera because my main camera can still do better video than iPhones, period. At the end of the day, it's still more granular than these products. So I just go there. I just use these in the standard modes for the most part, and it's amazing. Also, the front-facing camera, still very good quality, although I do think if you like to get group shots, I would skip this phone. If that's your main thing, selfie cameraing, I would go ahead and get any of the newer 17s. All of the front-facing selfie cameras are just far superior on a new phone. So just skip this if that's your main thing. You're going to be doing self-video, self-content creation from the selfie camera. Just skip this one. But if that's not your primary objective with the cameras, I still think they're a definite go here in 2025, even headed into holiday season, no matter who you're getting it for or if you're getting it for yourself. It's still a really strong offering. So one of the things I don't think is that great is the storage value. I don't think at $799, I think 128 gigs at $799 is a little bit of a high price tag, especially when you consider that the base 17 is 256 gigs for $799. I feel like they should have dropped this to 256 gigs at $799 on this phone. I think it's a better deal like that. So for me, the 256 gigs is slightly high on this device, but I get where they're coming from. You know, you got 256 gigs on a smaller phone, $799, 256 gigs on a larger phone, 16 plus, the $899 and the $999 if you want the Air for the sleek, different, innovative feel. At the end of the day, I don't think the storage value is strong here, whereas I do think it's strong on the base 17. So one of the great things about this phone is that it does get really strong battery. And if you're coming from an older iPhone, you'll get your USB-C, although this is not the fastest transferring version. That would be reserved for the pros. At the end of the day, it's like a 4674 milliamp hour battery. So it's pushing near 5,000, not quite. And it definitely feels a little bit dated by comparison to some of the other phones with silicon carbon batteries starting to make their way onto the market. But at the end of the day, with the optimizations, Apple controlling this hardware and software, and that being a pretty large battery and this not having 120 hertz, I do find this phone to last very, very long. It's definitely a full day and then some phone. It reminds me a lot of the Max devices, while being slightly behind those a little bit in the battery, but it's close. So definitely better than base model phones, but not quite Max level. It's somewhere in between, and it's very acceptable. It just gets through a day, and then probably maybe like a quarter to a half of the next day. That's how I feel about the experience on here. So it's a thumbs up in this department when it comes to the battery life. So a little bit of connectivity is just a little bit faster with Bluetooth and some Wi-Fi on some of the newer ones, transfer speeds, but this is pretty good too. I mean, this still got 7, no 6E, but 5.3 Bluetooth, not the latest standard, but it's strong. Very good, reliable Wi-Fi and 5G, emergency SOS, messaging via satellite, does have Face ID on board via the dynamic island. In addition to that, this does have most of the things that you would want in terms of just reliable connectivity as the newer, bigger phones with the best features out. So it's pretty strong in this department as well. I don't have a real issue with connectivity. So if you're wanting to recommend this, if I was wanting to recommend this as a phone, I think it's pretty good. You can also push this to a display. This is a display port as well. The camera control is fun to use if you don't want to pay thousands to get it there. I just almost dropped it right there. The aluminum shell on this phone also tends to feel a little bit light, but still sturdy, a little bit strong. I do feel like this glass back could crack a little bit if you dropped it on the wrong angle, so be careful with that. And the camera bumps do stick out a bit off the body, so a nice case would give this really solid protection overall. It seems pretty durable in a nice size versus like the smaller iPhone 17 right here. All right, so what are some of the cons? Well, again, no 120 hertz, no always on display. So if that's something that you really want, this is out. Here are the pros. It comes in a nice teal, an ultramarine color, a pink color as well, for those of you who do like the pink. It does have really good endurance on the battery. It has good cameras. It has an ultra wide camera, unlike the Air. It comes in at cheaper than the $799. Well, it comes in at the same price as the 17, but it comes in at cheaper than the Air. It comes in at cheaper than the Pro Maxes. So it is a cheaper, larger iPhone, but still not cheap, but cheaper. Is it a good recommendation? I think at full retail, it's a little bit high. I think if you could find this on a deal, it would be a much better steal. Also, if you do a trade-in and get the base model 128 gig, I do think you could cop this at probably just a few $100 with a trade-in. So I think when you get this down in the lower price tag, it's a solid offering. And it pretty much offers, I would say, about 85% to 90% of what the latest iPhones offer. So a year later, I've been very happy with it. There's just not a lot wrong with it, but there are a few things that don't make it a super exciting phone for a techie person. But for most consumers, I think it does more than enough for most people. So thumbs up if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you haven't already, and let me know if you're going to be picking up an iPhone 16 Plus now that it has a discounted price this year in 2025. If not, if you're not interested in the Plus, or you wanted to see maybe a 17 Plus, let's discuss that as well, because I thought they were going to bring a 120 hertz version of the Plus. That probably would have been a little bit more successful, I think, than the iPhone Air. Let me know your thoughts down below. I'll catch you on the next one. Nick here. Be sure to be well. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and peace.